The problem is usually not that the niche is too small. It's that your brand is too general that it never catches on. So when you have something that like isn't working, if somebody launches a podcast and it's not working, your first response is to go, how can I widen the audience for this? And you end up with a watered down brand. I think the answer is to go the opposite way and go even further down and go, hey, if the brand isn't growing like I should, don't get broader and more general, get super narrow and super focused. And then later you can expand, right? But you got to get that initial beachhead or whatever, I call it a home base, right? You've got to establish that first. You've got to break through enough.
Zach, what do I do when a video goes viral? How do I milk that for all of it's worth?
We're done. Podcast episode is done. Matt Johnson, everyone. He's here to talk about podcasts. I was really curious as to a few things. One, why are they still important? Is it a fad? It dies? Is it still going to continue to grow? And next, how has he been able to help some of the most amazing people build these podcasts and help them monetize through it as well? Because I don't know if that was part of it, but that was my personal question, Matt, that I wanted to add in there.
We can talk about whatever you want to talk about.
Yeah, and my co-host Janki Patel, she's amazing, out of San Jose, and she also has a red band. I think the theme is red. I just didn't get it.
No, you know what? That's Hiren's favorite color. Sorry, Tristan. So sorry.
I like it. That's good. That's good. Matt, welcome, buddy. How did you get started in the whole podcast world?
Yeah, I really
almost by complete
too.
accident. Yeah. So I was an agent in a team. I started a team back in like 06, 07. I didn't like the day-to-day of the business, especially the client management part of it. So I ended up getting out and chased the dream as a musician for like 5 years. And I got back into real estate through a very odd way, which is I started working for a marketing agency whose clients were a bunch of agents and coaches, especially. So I ended up getting introduced to like Greg Harrelson and Jeff Cohn and all these amazing people, Michael Mayer, Joshua Smith. I did like Google Hangouts with them back in the day when that was a thing. I would run them and co-host them and stuff. And one of those guys that I did that with was Greg McDaniel. And one day he called me up, it's like 2015, and said, dude, we should start a podcast. We're already doing these like live webinar things, basically. Yeah. He said, we should totally do this as a podcast. And I had been thinking about it. I was actually going to call him the next week to pitch him that idea. He beat me to it by a week. So I said, of course, let's do it. And so we started turning these live video things into podcast episodes as well. And we threw it up on iTunes, and it just took off. It was the right time. I mean, there's obviously me and Greg had really good chemistry. And so there's a lot there. We had really good guests and stuff, but it was just the right time. Like podcasting was exploding. You had Super Agents Live, you had Real Estate Rockstars, but you didn't have a ton else. You had some big ones, but that was about it. And so within 18 months, we were speaking across the country at like a session that was packed. It was standing room only. It was crazy. It happened that fast. Yeah. So, in that led to then launching podcasts with Greg Harrelson, Lars Hedenberg, Michael Hellickson, Marky Lemons-Ryle, and a bunch of other people, both in real estate, mortgage, and then that led to outside of that. But at the same time, I was like doing all this stuff in real estate. I got into like a partnership with Jeff Cohn. I was helping him build his coaching consulting business. I was doing something with Aaron Wittenstein. I was helping him build courses, and we were going to build this membership website together. Anyway, I did a whole bunch of stuff. Most of that was a waste of time. I got out of that and focused on building my agency. Right? There's a whole bunch of joint venture stuff. It was
this stuff.
I did all that stuff.
It was a waste of time.
It was all a whole bunch of it was a waste of time.
So good.
It was an experience. How about that? It was an experience.
You learned from it.
Yes.
So good, dude.
Yes. Well, what's funny about that is I did the same thing in music. I was in like 4 different bands. I apparently didn't learn my lesson. I should have just focused on the one that had the best shot. But anyway, I made that same mistake in business. So I had to get myself out of all that stuff. And the great thing about it is all the relationships stayed really, really great. I even started help start a podcast company that went after the financial advisor market. Today, that company is bigger than mine and has like 100+ clients in that space.
Wow.
Right. That I helped them build the back end operations of that business. That was one of the partnerships I was in that I had to get out of, but it was a good decision. So I focused on just building my agency, and I'm like the poster child for figuring out like other ways to monetize a brand in real estate without actually selling homes. So I think that's one of the things that we wanted to talk about today, because I've done it all. I've done, so I run an agency that produces podcasts where people pay us. I have my own podcast where we make 6 figures on the back end. And I've done everything you can possibly do to like, and tried to like monetize a podcast. I've done speaking gigs. I've created courses. I've written a book. I've done basically just about everything you can do. And so, yeah, it's been a fun, wild ride, but it was the podcast that kicked things off. And then that led to starting the agency, and the agency pays all my living expenses and stuff like that. All the other stuff is bonus, basically.
So Matt, I really wanted to ask you this question. For the past couple of days, actually, Tristan, I've been thinking about having a podcast because with the leverage piece in our business, Tristan, we need to like focus in on like, you know, why is that so important in our business, right? And so I've been thinking about that.
Yeah,
it's a good point.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, for you guys in particular, you guys have got the audience. You have the ear and the attention of a huge chunk of the real estate market, right? So the role of a podcast at that point, once you've got attention, you've got an audience, would be to convert them to something that they don't already believe in, right? So if you have something that you're selling them and you find people coming into your funnel and they don't agree with you on enough, and they don't agree that they need it now, they don't agree on the urgency of the solution that you have, they don't even know, maybe it's the VA company, they just don't believe it's possible to outsource enough to a VA to make it worth it. Like just all those beliefs, all those things where they're not aligned with you to where they're an ideal client, that's where something like a podcast can slowly over time chip away at all those, you know, limiting beliefs and misconceptions and myths that they believe in and all that stuff, and basically chip away at it until the point where they go, wow, you're right. Okay, sign me up. Fine. I'm gonna book a call and sign me up. I've been listening to podcasts for 6 months. I get it. Let me sign up. That's what a podcast does for you over the long run. And then if you don't have an audience and you need to build one, podcasting can do that too. But you guys, with the Facebook group exploding and all the stuff that you guys are doing, you already have the audience. So now you just use a podcast like as a conversion tool.
Nice.
Is podcasting still relevant? I mean, wouldn't it be too late at this point to jump in with everyone doing a podcast?
It's all about the niche you pick. You know, if you came out with a podcast that was super general and it was just about, hey, get more sales, like maybe, I mean, you guys have still got enough of a, you want focus.
Yeah, you have to be focused. Okay, so that's one thing. That's step number one, be focused, right? What else can you share with us, Matt? Like what else should we do when we're trying to build it up finally to monetize, right?
Well, so a couple things. I would say in today's day and age, go short rather than long. Understand that people already have their Tim Ferriss's, their Impact Theory, their Ed Mylett. They already have all these shows that they're listening to that are an hour plus, that their commute, you know, it may be taken up already. So if you're launching a brand new show, especially from scratch, you want to go short. That way you give people a chance to try you out in the cracks in between listening to other shows that they're already a fan of. So give people maybe 5 minutes, 10, 15 minutes, whatever. Give them a short format so that they can try you, and have one or at most maybe 2 calls to action, a next step that they can take, and just hammer it every episode, right? Take the next step, take the next step, take the next step. That's why I'm really reluctant. Like with a lot of my real estate clients, I don't encourage them or hook them up with a whole bunch of sponsors, because most of the time they make more money by promoting their own stuff. So I want their calls to action going to their stuff. I don't want them sending people to this and that CRM and, you know, all this other stuff that they could work with. Because most of the time, one person paying them for coaching, one person buying one of their courses is way more than they get from a sponsor anyway. So to me, I always focus on monetization, like sell your own stuff first. Now with my real estate podcast, we tried all that stuff. And EXP on the back end was still way better for monetizing. I mean, you know, EXP is the holy grail of monetizing a brand. But if you're not there yet, or if that's not your thing, then yeah, courses, coaching, things like that, you can make a lot more money just selling your own stuff.
Ooh, I like that. All right, so talk to me about audience growth, because a lot of people tuning in right now and watching this on replay, they're going to be thinking, well, I'm just getting started. How can I grow this?
So the best way to grow a podcast, and Tim Ferriss confirmed it, so I know it's not just me, is going on other podcasts as a guest. So if you have a show in real estate, especially if you have a show that's for other agents, there is a very lovely, tight-knit ecosystem of podcasters in real estate. And if you're a good guest, they'll talk about you. They'll introduce you to other podcasters. So you really only need that initial foothold. So you only need to get a couple, right? Reach out to your network, reach out to people on Facebook, reach out to me, tell me what you'd like to talk about. And I can, I and other people can refer you to podcasters and get you that foothold. And if you're a good guest, you'll get more opportunities. That's the best way, hands down, to grow a show, is go where the podcast audience already is. You can chase growth on social media. You can do all those things. You can speak, those are also great opportunities. And I have clients that do it all, but yeah, nothing's been more effective than just being a guest on other shows.
Dude, how do we get a hold of you so you can help?
I was just about to say that.
How do we do that?
Well, we're here on Facebook, so that's probably the easiest. Just go to facebook.com/getmicrofamous. That's my direct link to my profile, and you can just message me there.
All right, hold on. Let's do this together. So Facebook.com/get
microfamous.
Famous. Perfect. Got it.
Yeah, just shoot me a DM.
Let's take a look at this. So
and by the way, that's the best way these days to get into anyone, like to reach out to any podcaster, is through their DMs, either on Facebook or on Instagram.
All right, so I got you. This is you, right?
That's me.
All right, excellent. And you've got your link there. What happens if I click on this?
Should just go right to our agency website.
Love
awesome. It. Dominate your niche with podcasting. All right, so tell me about the type of clients that you take on. Are they individual agents? Are they bigger companies? What do you do? What's the extent of this?
So both, but my concern is whether they're thought leaders or not, or if they aspire to be thought leaders. So if you have something interesting to say, you want to make an impact on the real estate space, maybe you want a seat at the table, you want influence in the real estate space, so you can make some changes. Those are the people that I want to work with. So yeah, we work with everyone from small people that you've never heard of, all the way up to the Greg Harrelsons of the world that have been, big in the space for 20 years. A good example is one of the podcasts that we launched within the last year was called Serving Not Selling. The host is Garrett Maroon, who's a KW team leader on the East Coast. And he has this service on the back end where he basically built his own amazing referral-based 36 touch system, kind of following the KW model. But he has a done for you service that you can basically just sell to agents, right? So he wants to reach more agents. So podcasting is perfect for him. So that's an example of the type of but he has very specific beliefs about how you should be generating referrals and why people come to you for referrals, how to ask, how to work it, how to work it into a system. Like, he has very specific ideas about those things. He's a thought leader in the making, basically. That's my jam, is I want to take people that have the potential to be a nationwide thought leader, but you're not yet. And I can help you to get there, and we can help refine your ideas and find the things that are the most compelling and interesting, and really then build a podcast around that to drive home those ideas over and over again to the market. So that's what I enjoy working with.
Oh, I like that a lot, man. I think when we look at podcasts in general, you're saying advice from you, see if you can make them a little shorter, right? Number one, go niche down. And if you can help it, if you're going to create something, or you already have something that you can offer, go that route instead of bringing in an outside brand.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Okay. I'm digging that. So then, let's say you take on a person or a company that's a little bit more established. Does the strategy change a little bit, or do you still look at the same things?
Well, the only way I would work with a company is if they had a thought leader who wanted to run the show. So once they identify who the thought leader is in their organization, and that's the person that's going to be the host, that's the person I want to work with to do essentially the same process, right? So it doesn't change a lot. There's a few more hoops to go through. There's maybe some legal and compliance stuff to worry about. That way they don't reveal anything accidentally that might hurt the company, if you're talking about publicly traded companies especially. But no, once they pick out someone, that's the person I want to work with. I wouldn't recommend a company doing it if they have to do it by committee. Podcasting, people tend to develop a relationship with the host. So if you have like a rotating cast, probably not going to work so well. Yeah, you want that one person that people can identify and go, that's the reason I listen. That's why I show up.
So here's my other question then, on the flip side, Matt. What if it's a new company and they want to establish themselves in the the podcast arena,
Mhm.
how would they, like, our company, like it's a new company, how do we progress in the podcast environment?
Well, let's say you wanted to start a podcast to promote like your VA company, for example. So you wouldn't want to do a podcast just about getting more sales. There's a million of those podcasts right out. What you want to do is you'd want to find a niche to where the people that stumble on and find that podcast are almost automatically the people that would probably be interested in signing up for a service like yours. So you'd want to narrow down, you want to pick a niche, probably around productivity, efficiency, outsourcing, something like that, to where the people that find that show and go, ooh, I want to listen to that. Like you're already halfway there to them signing up, if that makes sense. So the first step of any podcast is you want to make the show that your ideal clients are craving and can't find anywhere else, right? So think about your audience is out there and they're listening to Real Estate Rock Stars and Super Agents Live and, Tim Harris and all this stuff. And they're going through like, maybe they find like once every 10 episodes, they find one that they like, right? Or they're sifting through all these podcasts, trying to find stuff about outsourcing and delegation and leadership and all this stuff, right? All those other podcasts don't specialize in those things. They're just kind of like sprinkled in, right? You come along with a show that gives them exactly what they want, condensed, and every single episode that comes out talks about exactly what they want to talk about. That's how you break through, right? So you want to think about what is your audience out there looking for that they're having to sift through a whole bunch of other content to find and just give it to them in concentrated form. That's essentially what we did with the team building podcast with Jeff. Is I realized that people were kind of like team owners were being interviewed on all these other shows, but they were just sprinkled in among, random luxury agent in LA and solo agent in Virginia that's doing 30 deals a year and all this stuff. So I knew all these team owners were having to go through all these other podcasts and we're basically like skip to find the episodes they wanted. We came out with that podcast and it was nothing but team owners, just bam. It's exactly what they wanted in super condensed form. And I think that's a big part of why that show took off.
So
I like that a lot, man.
Condensed version.
Yeah, super niche, which is why it's a big part of why I wrote MicroFamous to begin with is, that we're just in an age of niching. If you get the niche right, you almost get carried along. You don't have to do a lot of pushing. And that's where people get themselves into trouble. They look for the way to get the biggest possible audience. And what they end up with is the most general, most bland branding they could possibly have. And then it just doesn't break through. So they get no support. They don't get any pull from the market. They have to do all the pushing. And if you're the type of person, like a lot of my clients are a little bit on the introverted side, like they'll crawl over broken glass to speak in front of 1,000 people. But if you send them into a networking event, they want to die 1,000 deaths. Like that's me too.
Right there. Right
so if you're like that, right? If you're like that, podcasting can work amazingly well, but you can't pick a podcast niche that requires you to do all the pushing because you're not going to be on social media 17 times a day. Push. You've got to create a podcast brand or any kind of brand, whatever you do, you've got to create a brand where the market pulls it from you so that you don't have to be the one pushing it all the time on social media, because that is totally unsustainable unless you just love doing that.
Got it, man. All right. So I'm sure you offer different services and I'm kind of asking it for me and for Junkie.
Sure.
Give us the price. What does this look like?
Yeah. It's $2K a month. Now, if you come in, let's say you're someone that want to like build your rev share line through EXP. There's a whole other track there where I might just be able to do all this stuff for you for free, right? So if you're an agent, you want to build a brand, that's a whole different conversation. But yeah, if you just come in as a regular client, $2K a month, costs a little bit more in the first couple months to launch a podcast, but then it settles in at $2K a month and it's for a weekly show. We do all the guest booking. It's completely done for you. It was modeled off of what I built for myself so that I could do it without showing up and doing all the back end work. So basically you as a client show up and talk on a format like this.
Oh, I love that.
We do everything else. We do all the back end work. And the next thing you know, the episode goes out. So
how many episodes a month? 4?
Yeah, 4.
And then
we can do a little bit more if you do shorter format.
Perfect. You also book us on a podcast, so you help us find other podcasts to be on?
Behind the scenes, I do what I can, but the landscape has changed a lot. I never added that in as an agency service. There's a whole bunch of services out there that do it. And none of my clients, when they would go hire those services, none of them stuck around for longer than 3 or 6 months. So I never added it into our service. It's a tricky thing to like guarantee that you can get people booked, because it's more of a relationship game now. So we don't build it into our service, but I do everything I can behind the scenes to make those introductions. But we don't charge for it. It's not built into our package.
Do you also help with creating the funnels for somebody listening in? They're like, I've got got this that I want to send people to. How do we do that? Do you also help on that end?
No, that can get into, 5K, 10K a month land. So we've never built funnels for people. Like I've built funnels for myself and for partners and stuff like that. So I know how much of a beast it is. So no, we don't build that into the podcast service. It takes enough just to get the podcast running and marketed and all that fun stuff correctly. We let the clients handle that, and usually they'll find someone that they like or on the back end to do their stuff. But I will say, I've been hearing really, really good things about Go High Level. I've talked to multiple people just in the last month that have said like, hey, like you can Go High Level makes it so easy to essentially buy a funnel off the rack from somebody, just incorporate it into your account and then tweak and adjust the things to suit your branding. So yeah, that's the direction I would look if I had to build a funnel from scratch today versus, 5 years ago.
Oh, interesting. So they're pre-made funnels. You don't have to make them all from scratch. Like, I forgot that the company that most people use. I forgot.
Like ClickFunnels or something.
ClickFunnels, that was the one.
Yeah. Yep. But buy them off the shelf. Lars is doing something really interesting where he's on Go High Level, and for all the people that he brings into his downline in EXP, he can essentially give them his recruiting funnel and then tweak it for their branding, their picture, their photo, like all their stuff. But then it has all the back end integrations, the automatic text, the email follow-up that goes out. All that stuff is basically copyable. So he can just open up a new account for them, dump all of his stuff in there, make the tweaks, and then they're essentially ready with a recruiting funnel built in. So there's some really cool things that you can do with that. That's why I say that's what I would look at if I had to build something from scratch now. And then there are people out there selling funnels that can be just bought and brought into your account. So yeah, there's some interesting possibilities with that.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
So with the 2K that you charge, tell me a little bit more of how that looks like. Like,
okay,
what do you do in the back end to get audiences more interested? Because I know I have a radio show that I have been doing for years, but I've never had a connection. I never was able to put two and two together, right?
So a radio show for the general public, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's nationwide international radio show.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to podcast, I've been thinking about this, and I'm so glad I got to meet with you here. Is that, just being an agent here, anyone that's listening in right now, they want to, like I said, start their own, but they want to use your services.
Mm-hmm.
What more are you providing them with the 2K a month?
So we provide so it's all the back end production. So the audio production, the video production, all the show notes writing, everything to post it and get it into all the usual apps, post it on their website, all that stuff, all the guest booking. So we take care of all that. We typically recommend no more than like 2 guest interviews a month from people that you don't know already. So that's who we book. I recommend the rest of the show is filled in with a combination of solo episodes or talking to people that are already in your network where it's just fun and comfortable, or client success stories, stuff like that. So we do all the guest booking. We do all the communication with the guests. So when the episode comes out, we're the ones that let them know. We ask them what platforms they're going to promote it to so that we can give them the right size graphics and all that fun stuff and kind of get that implied commitment that yes, they're going to share their episode, because that's the toughest thing in podcasting right now is getting guests to share their episode. So we do everything we can on that side to get them to do that. So we take care of all that. You don't have to worry about any of the guest communication. And then the back end of like promoting it on social media, we handle building the email to your list. So it goes out that way. So basically hit people, 4, 5, 6 days a week on social media with something about the podcast, and then once a week through email. And then, like I said, behind the scenes, we can work together on, okay, how do you get more podcast interviews on other places? What are you doing for speaking? What are you doing for all this? Like just all the other things that we can kind of help behind the scenes on to grow the overall brand. And the podcast is just part of that. So there's a lot that we do that goes into the service, both from the production side, which is a crap load of work, and then just working with me. I usually meet with clients one-on-one about every 30 to 45 days to talk about that higher level strategic stuff of how is the podcast growing? What are you doing? What are we doing? Is everything moving in the right direction? What else could we be doing to grow the show and grow their brand and all that fun stuff? So that's all included.
I have a question about this whole podcast thing. Is this sponsored by REDX? How have you seen anything along the lines of somebody just doing a podcast about expireds for sale by owners? Anything along those lines or no?
No, REDX is the closest thing to us. So it's funny you mentioned that. Yeah, it's so their podcast is about prospecting That's about as small as that niche gets. There is no podcast that I know of that specifically deals with expireds or FSBOs or even the combination. So yeah, I think that space is open.
That's a niche.
Absolutely, it's a niche.
Yeah,
Good niche.
that's a
Mhm.
great.
Dude, I think, so hold on. Best way to get a hold of you, Facebook group, right?
Yeah.
Yes, you got pursuingresults.com or the or just the Facebook, but yeah, so you've either got the option of hiring the agency, or if you're interested in joining EXP and you want someone that can actually help you grow your brand within the industry and help you get into coaching, creating courses, growing a legit brand that'll make you a name in this business, that's where I can potentially help. And you might even get a podcast or a YouTube channel or something like that produced completely for free, so that you can reach out for either of those reasons, either for the agency or for the EXP side of things.
And Rob has a question.
Yep.
Anybody doing luxury niches?
Yes, actually, I launched that podcast. It's called the Luxury Real Estate Specialist, if I remember right. Luxury Listing Specialist, excuse me. That's Mike LaFido. He has a certification. So yeah, that general luxury niche is occupied.
All right, perfect.
Yeah.
All right, so you look at a LabCoatAgents podcast. What would you do differently if you're looking at our podcast, not knowing probably anything about it, but what would you say, you know what, you guys should do, or maybe try, or this is an opportunity when it comes to us covering such a wide range, specifically for agents at B, or what do you think?
Well, so, and we're talking about for like the LCA brand.
Yeah, LCA brand specific to agents.
Okay. Well, the LCA brand is general enough that people want that from you, and you've already got the attention, you've got the brand. So I don't think there's anything wrong with covering a wider spectrum. You're not at the point of trying to break into the market, so you don't have to go as narrow. I will say, I think one of the things that's so attractive about the LCA brand is the sharing of behind the scenes details that and really digging into the mechanics of the lead gen side of things. There's one thing I've noticed about both podcasting and the mastermind world, which is that mostly you only hear about the successes, which is cool and that's great. But all the people that I run with, all the thought leader, coach, consultant types, they're also equally interested in what did you try that didn't work and why? And that I don't really see shared anywhere. Like nobody shows up on a real estate podcast and talks about how their latest Google pay-per-click campaign massively failed and why, right? They only talk about the successes. So I think from an LCA perspective, that's a place where you could potentially bring massive value, which is, hey, if you're going to do this, if you're going to do pay-per-click, if you're going to do Zillow, if you're going to do whatever, here's the stuff that people have tried that they found didn't work. Now, like there's something, you'll hear some things that, yeah, here's what worked and that's great. But if you're thinking about trying it, we've also, like, especially if it's something that's like on the cutting edge, before you do this, here's a podcast on all the mistakes not to make. I think that's where LCA probably has an extremely high trust factor, and people would be very interested in that kind of stuff instead of just hearing the after the fact success story of, yeah, I figured it out and that's great, but that information is 2 years old. The Google pay-per-click has changed in the last 2 years, right? Facebook ads have changed in the last 2 years. I don't care what you figured out 2 years ago that worked. I want to know what you're doing right now. So I think if you moved, if you incorporated that into these, I think that'd be super high value.
I love that, dude. I just texted my friend. I'm like, because we just ran a bunch of TikTok ads at the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
For a few months, and we learned what not to do. So
that's right. It's like sharing the stupidity tax that you paid with other people. Yeah.
Yeah.
So true. So true.
I think that is so cool to actually talk about not only your story, but to talk about the negatives that didn't work for you on a podcast, really.
Right.
Because people want to hear, and people then relate to that also, that they relate to that storyline, Tristan, they relate to the failures. And then they're like, yeah, I've been there, done that. What can I do to change it, right? And I think that is great because now you're giving them a solution to help them grow their business. And you're giving them a solution like, hey, Google ads, do this, or Facebook ads, do this, or whatever the lead generation topic could be. Is there?
Yeah, people are sick of the. There's been a lot of I'm coming down from the mountaintop on high with the tablets that are pre-written for you. Yeah. There's been so much of that over the last 10 years of internet marketing that people are really tired of that approach of I have all the answers and I'm here to tell you what you should do. You hear that word should thrown around a lot. Right. Yeah, if you find yourself, by the way, doing that in your content, please stop. Nobody should ever say you should do something. Yeah, I think people are more interested in fellow travelers that are also learning, but maybe they're a year or two further along the path than they are. I think that is starting to become more of an attractive type of brand and positioning here. So if you're which is great, because obviously if you're a real estate coach, you realize you only need to be a couple of steps ahead of where your clients are. You don't need to be 20 years down the road. You don't need to have everything figured out in order to coach. I think people are coming around to appreciate that more and more. They would rather work with someone that is just a couple years ahead of them than someone that is so far ahead of them they don't even remember what this stage feels like. And that's been what a lot of real estate coaches and the courses and the stuff that's been sold over the last 10 years in every market, not just real estate, but every market has been like that. It's like, I figured this out 10 years ago, 30 years ago, and now I'm going to show you how you should do it. Like, I think people are just getting resistant to that approach.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
I also feel, go ahead, Tristan.
No, I'm agreeing. I like it.
Yeah, I also agree with you, Matt, because I think people like us, you know, who want to be in that space and share and shoulda, coulda, woulda, and now here's what we did to make a difference. I think, you know, taking this approach has helped us. What about you? Actually having a conversation, it really has helped me with the radio show and the phones ringing, right? You know, whether it's real estate, just talking about the market, or, you know, going on a podcast and talking about why would this help versus what happened, it didn't work, why did it not work, what was the challenge? Now we have a solution, right? So things of that sort, I think, would be really good. And if you have, like you said, the niche, you know, and I think a couple people asked about luxury niche and all of that good stuff. Is there, my question to you is there space, just like there's a space for expireds and so on, is there a space for us as
yes, absolutely. Because I think I mentioned just in the productivity, efficiency, delegation, outsourcing, there's really, as far as I know, nobody's really done a podcast specializing in that. You know, I mean, Monica Reynolds' class at KW about how to hire your first assistant has been like one of the most popular classes in that ecosystem for years and years and years. Nobody's done a podcast about it, right? I mean, that her content has been on individual podcast episodes on a whole bunch of different shows, right? But nobody's done a podcast in that space. So I don't think there's any, there is no point where there will be too small of a niche to niche down. I mean, just look at the real estate investment space. There's 10, 20 times as many podcasts in that space. But guess what? Then the Airbnb niche comes up, and it's like all of a sudden, bam, you have this whole new crop of thought leaders and coaches and consultants in a whole new space in an industry you thought was stodgy and boring, which it is, by the way. But not now that Airbnb came up. So there's always something new coming. We launched a podcast last year, and this is the weirdest niche I've ever been in, right? I had a high-level OBGYN come to me and say, I want to launch a podcast. She makes $500,000 a year. And on the side, she runs a 6-figure consulting business teaching other female physicians how to negotiate better contracts. So her clients make 30 or 50K a year more from hiring her for like 5K or something like that. So we launched a podcast that is exclusively about contract negotiations for female physicians. How small of a niche is that? Her podcast is kicking butt. She has like 80 5-star reviews in her first year. It's insane.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah. So I don't think that, I mean, the problem is usually not that the niche is too small. It's that your brand is too general that it never catches on. So when you have something that like isn't working, if somebody launches a podcast and it's not working, your first response is to go, how can I widen the audience for this? And you end up with a watered down brand. I think the answer is to go the opposite way and go even further down and go, hey, if the brand isn't growing like I should, don't get broader and more general, get super narrow and super focused. And then later you can expand, right? But you got to get that initial beachhead or whatever, I call it a home base, right? You've got to establish that first. You've got to break through enough. And that's the mistake that most people make, is they won't niche down enough to where they get attention at all. And they end up just, basically drowning in a sea of sameness.
Right. And you have to relate to your audience, right? That's what I really feel that no matter what you do, whether it's social media, whether it's, podcasting, whatever it is, you have to relate to your audience. And I think that works well. Where does the monetizing come in? That's my last question, by the way, Tristan.
Okay. So I love this. First of all, the easiest way, let's say you build a brand inside the real estate space and you start getting like speaking and podcasting opportunities. The easiest call to action is, hey, reach out to me. I have a couple of slots open a week for one-on-one clients to coach on XYZ. Reach out and let's do something. Charge them $1,000 a month, $1,500 a month, and just get started. So that's the easiest way to monetize. I mean, a couple of clients that make you $2,000 a month, honestly, is more than you'll get from brand sponsors, and a whole bunch of other things that you could try. Now, once you have some coaching clients, or maybe you're speaking to bigger audiences and you have more exposure, then maybe you create a course, right? So I think Michael Mayer went mostly directly from writing the 7 levels of communication directly into like coaching big groups because the book blew up, right?
Yeah.
And if that happens to you, amazing, great. But that's mostly the only time that big course sales work is if you already have a brand that's getting traction. In the early days, if you don't have that yet, just focus on one-on-one or maybe very small group coaching, because that'll make you way more money. The other option is, like you mentioned, like having a service, right? So you've got a VA service, or you have a done for you marketing service. My friend Glenn Twiddle in Australia was coaching. And then when COVID came along, he basically transformed his coaching offer, where he was teaching agents how to market on social media and generate and convert leads, to where he just said, screw it, I'm just going to do it for him, and I'm going to charge him $1,500 a month. That is now a 7-figure agency.
Wow.
Glenn
So
is
there's,
an awesome dude. Glenn is an awesome dude.
Glenn is a sharp man. So there's that's where I would say to start. You start with coaching mostly, or small one-on-one or small group offers, and then that may turn into a course or a service or something bigger that you can sell to more people. But yeah, before you worry about sponsorships and things like that, or partnerships or affiliates with companies where they pay you for the number of signups that you send, all that's great, but all that stuff only works if you already have an audience. When you're on the climb and you're building your audience on the way up, if you want to make money, do stuff that one person can put thousands of dollars into your pocket.
That's awesome. By the way, this is recorded, you guys, so you can watch it on our YouTube channel while my dog is barking like crazy out there. Probably seeing another dog go by. But anyway, thank you so much, Matt. This is awesome.
This is a blast.
Great, man.
I took a lot of notes.
I was going to say, I was thinking it was going to be me and you, Tristan. So I was going to pick your brain a little bit about your experience. I mean, you've done more than I have in terms of blowing up your brand. I'm curious what you'd say. Like it sounds like it's changed your life.
Yeah, man. I think it really came down to the niche. It really is the niche.
Yeah.
I just happened to pick a niche that was growing at the time in the right environment. And a lot of it has to do with timing too. So
yeah,
I think,
you will not hear many people admit that, but it totally does.
yeah, I think
Timing is everything.
Yeah, timing has a lot to do with it, and niche. And I find this thing right now in social media, the more you niche down on specific things, you're seeing those TikTokers blow up, those YouTube shorts blow up. So it applies to the social world as well as to podcasts now that I'm doing, which is great. I never thought to piece both of those things together, man. So thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah, man. It's
absolutely.
a lot of fun.
I appreciate that. Now I'm going to read to you. So thank you, Matt. Junkie, thanks for being on. Matt, thank you. This is sponsored by REDX, even though we didn't talk anything about expireds and for sale by owners, which is fine.
Well, but they have a brand builder product coming out. They gave me an inside peek on that. It's really, really good. And it's not for prospecting. I don't know how much in the way of details I can give out, but yes, this ties in to REDX more than probably I'm excited for that to come out, and that will make more sense, and you'll hear about that, especially if you're in their ecosystem. But yeah, they have a really good podcast, so if you're prospecting, go check that out. They've done an amazing job with the content that they put out. That is the closest thing as far as a podcast that deals with expireds and for sale by owners. They actually do get into like live role play and stuff like that. They just did a really good job. Like if you see a company doing content well, REDX is a really good example. So check their stuff out.
Love REDX for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
See you guys.
See you later, Tristan.